and clear.
Simon, I've clicked the start live streaming. Is it live streaming?
It is with me.
Simon, can you hear me?
Yes, it's just come through.
Perfect. Okay, Chair, you're good to go.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good morning and welcome. Where are we? We're on the 11th of December, and this is the Community Safety and Corporate Planning Committee meeting for Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Authority. Just for some clarity, if you could all mute your phones, etc., so we're not disturbed. I would normally give a fire alarm warning now, but the honest answer is if it goes off in your house, please make exit as fast as you can and hopefully stay safe. Just for clarity, when it comes to people speaking or asking questions later, generally it's useful if you could all keep your devices. I'm happy for people to keep their videos running if they want to, but if you could keep us on mute, it does, because sometimes we get it feeds back in. And for those of you that aren't too sure, in the bottom left-hand bottom corner, it's a little microphone will be flashing. It says mute, so you can press that to mute yourself, turn your microphone off, and then you can press it again to bring your microphone back on again. If you want to indicate to speak or ask a question, I'm not sure, have we got hands on this? It's been a while since I've used WebEx. If you want to indicate in the chat feature or wave your hands, I'll acknowledge you, and then we'll make sure that everyone has the opportunity to speak. One final
Chair,
one.
There is a raise hands function. If you hover your mouse over your name in the participants list, you should see a picture of a hand appear. It's black when it's unraised and it turns blue when you've raised it. So if people want to use that, they can.
Okay, that's fine. So that's the clarity, but I won't miss anyone out. So I'm sure that the opportunity will be there. And just one final thing to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and we are being streamed live on YouTube. So I'd like to welcome anyone that's observing us there, members of the public or colleagues or everything. It's wonderful to have you join us. Okay, to the main.
Well said.
So the main business, just for clarity, before we start the agenda, I'd just like to make a small point. The agenda, these meetings seem to be a bit like buses, especially the point that I want to make is in relation to the members. Well, we've had conversations about this at our governance review. There's been an issue about lack of detail or having meetings for no reason. So just for clarity, we had a whole year without a meeting, and now we're like buses. So we've got July, October, and December with meetings. Now, I have to just for members to be clear, I wasn't involved in the formation of the agenda for this meeting. So I believe because it's likely to be very short, it may not have been worth holding the meeting. However, we are where we are. Item 1 of our agenda, apologies for absence, please.
Chair, there are no apologies. You have a full complement. There is a vacancy
Fantastic.
on the committee that is yet to be filled.
Fantastic. And Steve, thank you very much for your efforts to get us online this morning. Minutes of the last meeting, members, they are in your pack. Are there any matters of accuracy or points that need to be raised beforehand or not dealt with further in the meeting? I've got one. Sam, just for clarity, we were talking about a glossary and potentially a list of acronyms at some point. I wasn't sure. I know that we had issues last time. I don't know whether was that dealt with.
Chair, I think Sam is addressing that. If I could just remind you as well that the purpose of the minutes being here is not to take matters arising. That would actually be against the legal protocols. The purpose of the minutes is just to sign as a correct record. But I'm sure Sam has got the glossary in hand.
Chair, just to confirm, I am working on the glossary. It's just taking a little bit longer than anticipated to pull everything in to make it as comprehensive as possible, but it is in hand.
No, I appreciate your time. So it was just I didn't see it noted. That was all as an action. I just wanted to just be cool because there were some issues with members, and I know it's worth reminding us. Okay.
Indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Members, unless anyone shows any different, I will ask that you're happy that I sign those as a true record when I get the opportunity.
Yes.
Yes.
There being no negative, that's fine. Thank you. Item 3 of our agenda, urgent items requiring attention. I'm not aware of any.
No, there aren't any, Chair, or shouldn't be.
Okie dokie. We come on to item 4 of our agenda then, please. Gavin, is it you presenting that to us?
Thank you, Chair. Yes,
Just for clarity, members, this item is just for notes. It's an update on where we are. Gavin, thank you for your time. Over to you, sir.
thank you, Councillor. I'm going to keep my video off at the moment because I'm a bit concerned that my broadband might drop out if I put it on. So I'll just run through the update. So as you're aware, the Safer Together programme consists of 4 work streams, which is the service delivery operating model, fleet and equipment, data and digital, and people development. So I'll start off with giving an overview of where we are with the service delivery operating model. You'll know following the decisions that were made on the 10th of January this year that Barnstaple, Exmouth and Paignton were looking to go for day crewed. That was deferred based on the agreement with the FBU with surrounding some of the other areas regarding shift patterns and pay for availability. That's currently on hold, and the reason for that is that due to COVID and the lockdown, the Fire Brigade Union have been unable to meet face-to-face with their branch members to gauge what their response may be. So we have encouraged them to do virtual meetings, but they'd prefer to do face-to-face. So that's currently deferred at the moment. To support that, what we have done moving forward is we've recruited 34 firefighters now from the specific process we ran from the on-call staff into the whole time. We've done that and we've put them onto new contracts to provide flexibility in the way that the service wishes to operate in the future. So it's not the contracts they've been provided are not our traditional 224 contracts, but a day duty contract, which means that we have flexibility with those individual members of staff and the way we move forward to be able to fulfill the requirements of the service delivery operating model. What we will be doing is to support this is to run an external recruitment campaign in early 2021 to fill the rest of the gaps with new people coming into the organisation to change the workforce diversity as well. Those staff again will be on the new contracts and they'll be used to support the crewing pool and to provide key positions in key stations as and when we identify gaps and to support the work we're doing around the roving appliances. At the moment, we're also working across the directorates, across ACFO, Pete Bond, myself, and the Director of Finance to look at how we can increase the efficiency of the way that we use our staff, which is one of the identified areas which came out of the HMICFRS report earlier this year. You'll know that we're also looking at roving vehicles, and this will be achieved once we have the full establishment of staff covering the whole-time workforce. So they'll be made up of our whole-time spare capacity. They will be then focused on the areas to deliver prevention and protection work and also support some of the ERS activity. We've now successfully closed Budley Salterton Fire Station, and we saw a lot of the staff move across to Exmouth starting from April in this year, with the sale being agreed in October of this year and the money back into the services budgets. This week has seen the full relocation of Topsham crews. It's been very successful. The first appliance moved the week before last from Topsham into Middlemore Fire Station to allow the new recruits and the new establishment of on-call staff there to train on their appliance and against their risk. The second appliance was moved late last week into Cliff St George at headquarters, and I'm pleased to announce that they've had their first shout this week, and the signs moving forward look quite promising. Certainly for the staff, the venue has provided an uplift for them. The replacement of the third fire appliances at Bridgewater, Taunton, Torquay and Yeovil. As you know, we're replacing those with 4x4 and what we call L4Ps. And that's to be complete by the end of January 2021. But this week, we have seen the replacement of Taunton and Torquay's Papa 3, or their third fire appliance, with those 4x4 vehicles. the removal of the second fire engines at Crediton, Linton, Martock and Totnes. So Martock and Totnes was complete at the end of March, and Linton and Crediton to be replaced with the L4P moving forward. So that's near or complete now. So the variable fire appliance availability, we've identified 11 stations that link into that, and they're also linking into the pay for availability so that they move across to the variable appliances at the same time that they take on pay for availability. So we've had 2 of those stations out of the 11 transition in the October of this year in the first tranche of pay for availability stations, with the others, with another scheduled for January 2021. And as we continue the rollout of pay for availability, they will then capture the rest of those stations moving forward. So moving on to pay for availability. So you'll be aware that the service agreed a collective agreement with the Fire and Rescue Services Association Union earlier this year, which has allowed the transition of those stations onto pay for availability, with the second tranche early next year, with the third tranche coming in later, a few months after that. We haven't been able to reach the same collective agreement with the Fire Brigade Union. That is still subject to ongoing negotiations. However, we got to the point where it went to London earlier this year, and we haven't been able to reach agreement. So that's still ongoing. What we can report, though, is that we have contacted staff, and we are aware that 44 of our stations, that's 55% of our stations, are keen to move on to pay for availability. We have a further 24 stations, that's 30%, have asked more information. And we have 11 stations, that's 15%, that do not wish to progress to the new model. That's based on legacy contracts that those individuals hold, which supports them better at the moment than pay for availability. However, what we would expect is for those stations to move across on pay for availability, those contracts reduce and diminish. Moving on to fleet and equipment. So we've had some good news yesterday. Emergency One, who are the providers, are working really hard following their return from the lockdown and COVID to provide those vehicles to us. So the chassis are with the supplier. We've agreed the vehicle layout of the cabs and also the bodies, and they're going to be with us in spring 2021. And that's an improvement on what we were predicting earlier this year with the first lockdown, which affected that bodybuilder. So they've assured us, and they are working really hard to prioritise the vehicles for us. So we should see new vehicles coming in spring, early next year. Moving on to the all-terrain vehicles. So we now have all of the all-terrain vehicles, and we are rolling those out. But due to COVID and some personnel matters within the stores and workshops, that's been delayed. Due to that, we prioritised the replacement of the 4x4 vehicles for the removal of the third appliances. So the ATVs will be going on the run between January and February of next year. Moving on to the asset management. So we've gone through the user acceptance tests. That's gone well, and we are now we're going live as of this week with that, looking at the phase 1 of the asset management, which is to support fleet and equipment processes and systems that we have to make sure that we understand where our equipment and appliances are. Once we've gone through that and we've successfully embedded phase 1, we're moving on to phase 2, which we're starting to look at certain equipment and vehicle types, which is a huge step forward for us. Moving on to the data and digital strand. We're looking at the MORIAT, which is a management of risk information. And again, this was delayed slightly because of the impact of COVID, where we reprioritised some of our ICT's work to support the response to COVID through the development of certain apps, which meant that we were able to manage the organisation more dynamically and record the decisions that we were making at silver and at gold. What we have done is we've prioritised the Protection app, which is supporting the work that we're doing through the Grenfell outcomes, but is also really high priority. What that will do, it's going to give us the capacity and capability to manage our business safety activities clearer, better, and provide information to all users across the organisation that can see what we have done, where and when. Moving on to the people development strand, it's progressing well, and in early 2021, all of our staff are going to have access to performance toolkits, which means they're going to be able to record their activities against their profile of their role and be able to deem competent or maintenance of competence through that. So that's going to give us complete oversight of what staff are working on, if they're in the right roles, what the development needs are, and how we can support that moving forward through promotions, but also laterally as well. We've reviewed the promotions process and structure, and we've also started to develop out of that talent pools, which we've got running now from the recent area manager process. We had the first pools established with group managers, and we'll be doing the same shortly with station managers. Again, that is to allow us to really identify the talent coming through the organisation, manage their development, and being able to move them around the organisation to expose them to different areas to really provide rounded training and development as they come through the ranks. That is also open to all uniformed and support staff moving through that. So the training development that we'll be providing to our support staff will be the same as the uniformed. The only difference will be the operational competence. So all of our staff will be trained to the same level, which is a really huge step forward. We've also done quite a bit of work recently looking at the apprenticeship scheme and how we can support that. We have a number of firefighters that come in through the apprenticeship scheme, but we want to really open up to the rest of the workforce. And there's opportunities for staff at all levels to take those opportunities to undertake an apprenticeship for accredited training. So thank you, Chair. That's the extent of my update. Happy to take any questions.
Gavin, thank you. As is always the case, before I start with comments, obviously I'll give members the opportunity to indicate if they want to ask questions, but just on behalf of myself and the committee, just to register a vote of thanks for the amazing hard work that all of our staff have done during this unprecedented time and continue to do. The flexibility that we've been showing is amazing, and as always, I'm never surprised by the flexibility that fire service staff have and are willing to go above and beyond the call. So I know the committee will support me in registering that. Onto the report, Gavin. Thank you. It's so heartening to hear that the things are moving forward and progressing as they are. But as a councillor, I'm a simple soul, so a little request maybe, if possible, or a little bit of guidance on your thoughts. I like, in my mind, I like to, with reports and stuff, I like to see things pictorially sometimes. And I was just wondering, there's lots of detail and really good progression here, but is there such a thing as a spreadsheet with RAG ratings at one end of it? Because obviously one of the things that I read the papers intently, but some of my colleagues may not have the time to dive. So it's the ambers and reds that we like to be able to pinpoint quite quickly. I wondered, do you have a spreadsheet of some sort or pictorial representation of progress?
So what we do for the governance arrangements for the Safer Together programme, we have the programme board, which I chair once a month, and through that we have an update, and we have the the programme management around that, which does give a RAG rating on where we are. So what we can do is we could extract that to provide some further information and let you know where we are against what the original plan timescales were in comparison to where we are. And within that, we've got all the risk management to identify what the impacts are from COVID and other risks that we may have faced. So, you know, the impact of Grenfell and bits and pieces like that. So I certainly can provide that. And if you'd like me to speak with you outside of this, I can find out when and how you would like that information to come to you.
That would be helpful. And again, I ask if you have it already, because I'm keen not to give you any extra work. It's just it would help, like I say, myself as a simple soul to be able to see and identify progress and as it goes along. Thank you for that response. I'm not seeing any indications for any questions, so I'm quite happy to waffle for a while if you like.
Yes, I have. I've got my hand up. Jeff Trail.
Jeff, I can't see your hand, so I apologise. So I'll make a note of it. Jeff, do you want to come in now? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Gavin, for your report. With regards to the service delivery operator model 2.8, closure of Budley, this is working well to date. And again, I wish to thank the crews from Budley and Exmouth for their continued professional support and commitment of the service for all residents and businesses within the Exmouth, Budley, Woodbury and surrounding areas. My question though, may I please ask if you could expand on the roving vehicle service and how it's going to work? That's on 2.7.
Certainly. Thank you for your question, Councillor. So what we were doing is we've identified where we've got the appliances which will be switched off during the day. We will be using our spare capacity on our whole time watches and from our crew and pool to put additional people onto those appliances, and it'll be variable each day how many we want to put on there. It could be up to 11, but it'll be variable based on the capacity we have in the organisation. Those staff will be operational staff, and they will be going out in identified areas where we have a pressing need to undertake prevention and protection activity to increase the capacity and make the staff more efficient. So that will be out front and centre, supporting the communities, as well as having the appliances in whole time areas. So essentially what we'll be doing each day or each identified period of need, we'll be putting on additional whole time appliances in those areas. They will also be able to respond to incidents as well and support other stations in the surrounding area to make sure, and we can review that to see if we can increase our ERS or emergency response standards for those incidents that occur in that area. So predominantly it's going to be used to increase our support to the communities through our prevention and protection activities, but there will also be operational staff to be able to respond should they need to.
Gavin, in relation to that, it might be helpful. I know that when we put the Safer Together programme together, there was some of the stuff that was in that was we might be able to use as a guidance note, because I know it might be worth considering that sort of thing rather than have to go down into, obviously that's an operational issue which doesn't necessarily, but if there was a guidance note that we were able to issue to members, that might be helpful to allow them to be, rather than you have to keep repeating yourself is what I mean. That might be helpful for them. George, Councillor Wheeler, did you want to come in, sir?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask about mobilisation to specific appliances. This is paragraph 227. Where we have P4A, the idea is to allow on-call firefighters to be alerted for specific appliances rather than the current blanket approach, whereby we could get 17 staff turning up for when we only needed 4, 5 or 6. Is there IT support mobilisation to specific appliances at the moment, or are we waiting for that to come in, please?
Thank you for the question. We've what we have been doing for the last few months is our ICT department have been trialling the use of phased alerting and working with those stations to identify which option would be best, whether it would be tactically, whether it would be to change the tone of the device, or whether it would be to issue different devices. So where we have a station that might have 2 fire appliances, as you said, if we only need 1, we may end up with the whole, at the moment we have the whole crew turning in, where we might only have 4 or 5 people go out. With pay for availability, we'll identify who the crew are going to be beforehand, and they'll have a roster of when they're on. So rather than, as you say, alert all of the station personnel, it will only alert those that are available. That will stop people being disturbed unnecessarily, but also stop people coming into the station expecting to be able to jump on the fire engine and it's already gone. What that allows us to do, those second appliances that are not required at that time, staff can either crew those on a voluntary basis and then be paid once it goes out, or they will be the vehicles that we can use to put our additional hold time capacity on to provide those roving appliances in that area. So although it's showing certain vehicle types, what we're focusing on at the moment is our frontline fire appliances rather than anything else.
Thanks very much for that, Chair. So we don't have an IT issue.
No, at the moment it's being worked through and the trials are going well with that.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, George. Thank you for your questions. Members are coming through thick and fast now. So I've got Margaret Corvid next, and then I've got Ray also. So thank you. So Margaret, would you like to ask your question, please? Or questions?
Just a quick one. Yeah, on the people development work stream, if that's okay, 5.1 and 5.2. Can I ask a question about that?
Carry on. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So when is it that we are likely to see not so much results, but data from this? Because there's a whole bunch of processes assessing people's training and establishing the talent pods. At what point do you expect to see results from this? And what form do those results look like they're going to take? How are you going to capture the data of that improvement? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we're starting to see positive results at the moment, and we are regularly. So as an example, we have our group manager pool set up, and we have done for about the last year, where we placed those people in development into certain posts. This week, our newly appointed area managers have undertaken an exercise to look at the skills that are required now, what training development are used for each individuals to be able to move those into new posts. And what we do with that is we undertake regular PPDs and record those to record what people's development activities are. And it's down to the individual and the line manager to identify further development. We do also have structured training that's provided through courses and other activities. To support the work going forward, we're in the process of identifying a supplier where we're going to purchase a performance management framework, and linked into that, the evaluation officer will be identifying a number of measures that we can embed across, and that will support the people development work. So at the moment, what I will say is, based on line manager discussions, what we need is a broader performance management framework, which will allow people to identify what their development is if they're moving up, but also allow us to track that throughout their whole career. So that's going to be supporting that. So at the moment, it's not anecdotal information, but it's based on line manager discussions that's recorded on the PPD. The way we're moving into the future, and we should have the performance management framework in the next 6 months. That will allow us to put performance measures around every individual in the organisation, whether they're in a development pool or not, so that we can ensure that they're getting the right support that they need to do their jobs.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much for that. That's really helpful. And, you know, definitely sort of, it's qualitative data. It's not anecdotal, it's qualitative, and it's still data. And I really would be excited to see if we're able to put this into a quantitative framework and then be able to sort of capture where the major areas of training gaps are, how they're affecting performance, and how the support for personnel development is resolving that. Because investment in this sort of thing is one of the best ways to improve an organization really quickly. And I hope it goes well. Thank you.
Margaret, thank you for your point. I know that I didn't slow you down, but it might be worth remembering the fact, obviously, we've got our HR, human resources, but that's probably more in their area than ours, although I'm sure that Gavin will be able to respond to you and make sure that you get the information you require. I'm just conscious of I don't want to be stealing other committees' work. It's bad enough now me getting told off for going too far. straying towards the operational, that is. Councillor Radford, Ray, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just want to ask a question on 2.24. I didn't quite understand the sentence which says only 11 fire stations, 15%, have said that they do not wish to progress with a new model. I wasn't quite sure what that actually meant. I don't know whether Gavin could sort of elaborate on that a bit more. I mean, the question is, we'll say they don't never accept it. Like, what's the score then?
Thank you, Councillor. So we this has come about through the and I'll say without embarrassing him, but this is down to the hard work of ACFO Pete Bond, who's been dealing with P4A or pay for availability exclusively from the start. I know it's been a difficult challenge, and where we've got to has been really good. We've got to the point with the Fire Brigade Union where we're not able to progress any further at the moment. They're not willing to commit to a collective agreement, which we have got with the FRSA, the Fire and Rescue Services Association Union. So what we've done is we've, through our staff, we've contacted all of our stations to identify who would be willing or keen to move on to the pay for availability system. What we have is a number of stations, those 11, which have legacy contracts, which essentially means that staff can show themselves available, but only need to turn in 75% of the time without any recourse. Now, for us, moving forward as a modern fire and rescue service, we need to know when people are available and when they're going to turn in to support the community in their time of need. Those contracts are being phased out at the moment, and we're working with those stations to provide options about how they move forward. Currently discussing to the executive board about how we move those onto those new contracts. So it's certainly something that we are focused on, but it's not something that's going to stop us moving forward, and it's something that's not going to remain in place for the foreseeable future. So it's something we are working directly with those stations to look at how we can move them onto the new contracts. What we need to be able to do is demonstrate to them through data, once we have it, the benefits of being on the pay for availability system. Those staff that are already on it will be able to use them as champions to be able to go out and identify and use case studies, but demonstrate how that's improved the service to the communities. If it comes down to it, then we'll look at other options.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Gavin. Thanks for that. Yeah, but please, it's not going to disrupt the organised much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ray, for bringing that. That was a point that I wanted to make, actually. And also, we have to look at staff welfare, of course. Well, I'm sure that Gavin would agree, the last thing we would want is any adverse pressure being put on people to change the contracts, because potentially some of these firefighters on these legacy contracts, as you call them, I think have been on them for some 20, 30 years. So it's not a new thing, and it suits people. So I believe that it needs to be 100% of firefighters agree on a station to go over to the new process. You can nod if I'm, or shake your head if I'm wrong. And so my concern is obviously that we wouldn't want to put any, whether it be not intentional pressure, but inferred pressure on firefighters to change, or colleagues, staff to change. So I know that that's the case, but it's important to make that point. By showing the positive nature of this, hopefully there could be some encouragement. But at the end of the day, it's still up to an individual whether they change their contract of work or not. Thank you. I've run out of people now, so I'll do a couple of mine, Gavin, please. I'm really excited about 2.14 with the third appliances actually going in, and the new L4Ps coming into place. So a personal request, really, but I'm sure it'd be the same for other colleagues in the room. I'd like an opportunity to have a look at one of those fire appliances. So I know the situation around COVID and station lockdowns is changing. So can I be at the top of the list, please, and ask to go over to Taunton at the earliest opportunity? Because I would really like to have a look, to see what they are, how they are, so that I can get an understanding of that, so that I can help me with my role. Where was I? We've spoken about a guidance note in relation to the vehicles. I think that's oh yeah, that was what it was. Just for clarity, 2.5, where you're talking about the new contracts. First question, I know it's semi-operational, but I will ask it anyway. Well, obviously still grey book, but the difference is it's not the 442, it's the day duty system, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is. So it's within the grey book, and it's a contract that we already have within the service. It's just that we took the decision to put staff onto that now. So it's something we already operate. So it's not new into the organisation, but we're just using that to be able to provide that flexibility.
Thank you. And on the same line, it for me as an ex-on-call firefighter, it's really great to hear that we're using the skill base that we have in our on-call system and bringing them in to whole time. I'm sure most of the time that they're dual, so they're whole time and on-call still as operational contracts.
That's right. So what we've done, we've advertised that within the on-call system. So those individuals are already competent staff, and what we have done through the process of identifying those individuals and the framework we've put in place through the National Fire Chiefs Leadership Council Leadership Framework has meant that we've really been able to pick from the best. So we're really pleased. I know certainly they're going to be working within Pete Bond's directorate, and Pete's had the opportunity to be able to brief each of those new recruits at the start of their training on what the expectations of the organisation are, and what they can expect from us and what we should expect from them. So it's given them a really good start and reintroduction back into the organisation.
Two more quick points, which I think are important. As a diversity champion for the authority, the member, I think it's exciting the fact that we've been able to open in the new year, potentially open up for external applicants to help to not necessarily target, but help with the opportunities to change our diversity structure. That would be really fantastic. And one final one, it's always important, young people and getting them interested in the fire service, and to hear the great work about the apprenticeships has to be recorded as being excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
There being no other members, Gavin, I think no indications to speak. So thank you for your time, Gavin, and I'll let you stand down now and we'll bring the next one in. I think that will be.
Chairman,
thank you for your time.
Chairman, I'm really sorry. I should put my hand up.
Chair, of course. No. I withdraw the last statement. If you want to come in, you're more than welcome. Over to Gavin Hardlock. The chair wants the word.
Only in the sense that we've got this item coming to the full authority on the 16th of December, and I think it might be useful if the really good questions that have been fired at officers this morning could be presented to officers, and the comprehensive replies we've had. You could think about turning some of those into actual recommendations to the authority, rather than the authority have to debate this whole thing again. I appreciate we probably will debate it all again, but to hear your committee's views for me would be very valuable.
Thank you. I think I'm hoping that Sam has been recording the questions as we go along. As far as making recommendations to them, I'm afraid I've been taken off the hoof there, because my note taking, because it's noting, would be there. But I think if you're happy to, that between us, obviously Sam, Gavin, and yourself, we can put something together and make that a little bit more formal. Because some of the points that this has came out of the last meeting as well, Chair.
I agree. It just shows that you're doing a really good job. You're diligent in the work that you're doing, and you're not just playing lip service. So I think it's about supporting the service to get to where we want them to be.
Thank you, and I get that. I welcome the opportunity. I would like nothing better than to be able to have items on our agenda that we're able to make formal recommendations to committee. And I know that the members on this this committee will be happy to make those points as soon as we can.
I'm more than happy that you take this offline, and we would welcome those comments on the 16th.
Thank you for the chair. Thank you, Gavin. You can stand down now, sir. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, members, we're moving on. Then item 5 of our agenda, which is an update on the Grenville recommendations and progress. Again, this paper is to be noted. But of course, as it will always, once the presenter has finished, we'll move on and take some questions. So again, as always, indicate if you can, or put a comment in the chat for if you've got questions. I believe, is it Pete that's presenting this? Director of Service Delivery, Pete Bonds, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Nice to see you all again, even if it is remotely. Yes, to give you an update now on the Grenfell Phase 1 progress, and also use of the various grant funding that's been provided to the service following some of the work done around protection, so the fire safety work nationally. So this is the third paper in a row which we're presenting just to provide members of the committee with progress against the Grenfell Tower Inquiry Phase 1 recommendations. As a reminder, there were 44 recommendations overall, and they're broadly divided into two main groups. So National Fire Chief Council and legislative changes, and then recommendations and improvements that services and other agencies can basically take in their own time and deliver within their own policies. Those 44 then are split in 18, if I take you to the table at paragraph 2.6, you'll see that there are 18 external actions. Basically, we're waiting for some legislative work to take place. There's been a consultation which finished in November on the fire safety order. There is work being done in legislation around the Building Safety Bill, which is expected to become law early next year. And there was one action which we previously noted as an internal, but actually it applies across our Network Fire Service Partnership. So we've moved that action into an external, and that is just for clarity, basically. So there's some areas there that we're waiting for further information, either from the NFCC or from a legal perspective. But again, all actions are in hand with task owners as it stands at this point in time. In terms of the internal actions and the things which we can actually get on with, we've completed 8, which were effectively quick wins that we could deal with fairly quickly in terms of policy changes or introducing new kit and equipment. Of the remaining 18 out of the 26 that we can deal with, some of them are a little bit more complex and require some time to put in place. And again, some are looking to be partially dependent on some of the outcomes of the external actions as well. So we have 13 due to be completed in the next 12 months and another 5 over the next 2.5 years in order to be done by April 2023. I would hasten to add that those are things which are not totally vital, certainly within Devon and Somerset, for public safety. We've obviously focused very heavily on the things which will make a difference and made sure we've got those things in place. And as soon as we get confirmation from the legal and national actions, we'll probably revise those timescales to bring them in line and make sure that we can deliver them as soon as possible. Moving on, the second part of the paper deals with the grant funding that has been provided. There are 3 separate pots of money which have come through. So the Building Risk Review Programme grant of £60,000. This is to deliver the Building Risk Review Programme, which is to review and inspect high-rise residential buildings within each fire and rescue service area. So these are buildings that are over 18 metres high and obviously have a direct correlation to the Grenfell fire. The government have provided a list for each fire and rescue service that they see as those buildings that are in scope, and they all have to be inspected by the end of December 2021. There are 89 of those buildings within the Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Service area. We have a programme of inspection to inspect all of those between October just gone and September next year, giving us a 3-month leeway just in case we discover any issues or we get delayed in terms of making those inspections. I'm pleased to say that as at the end of November this year, 21 of those 89 have been inspected. So we're actually slightly ahead of schedule from what our expectations were, and that's due to the good work of our protection safety officers getting out and getting on with those inspections. We spent just over £1,100 of that building risk review grant money at this point in time, and that's just providing technology hardware for the team to be able to use and deliver against those inspections. We expect that as we delve into the buildings more, we'll spend more of that money and some of the extra bits of kit and equipment that our protection officers will need in order to make sure that those buildings are safe. Second grant is the Protection Uplift Programme grant. This is just over £250,000, £256,900. And the main focus of this is to increase the resources within fire rescue services to deliver protection, which is our fire safety, building safety cohort. And it can be used in a number of different ways, basically to encourage more fire safety officers to be employed or to enhance competency and qualifications. There is also the ability to use it for hardware such as tablets, body cameras, and encouraging better use of data systems. However, our focus is on providing better resources in terms of people. So it very much aligns to some of the work which Gavin previously talked about with regards to increased prevention and protection work and increased productivity of our existing crews. So we want to improve the career pathways in protection, encourage our firefighters to undertake qualifications and give a better comprehensive spread of ability across Devon and Somerset to undertake more inspections in our rural areas as much as we do in our urban areas. So at the moment, we haven't spent any of that grant. And the reason for that is that we have a programme of work which we need to put in place in order to ensure that the training fits with the courses that are available. Unfortunately, obviously COVID has put some barriers in terms of booking and making training plans clear over the last few months. So we haven't been able to certainly implement some of that, but we will be starting to do that into 2021 as we move forward. So I'm expecting to see a spend against the Protection Uplift funding start to take place over the next 6 months. And the final funding is the Grenfell Infrastructure Fund. So Lord Greenhow of the Home Office, one of the Fire Ministers, gave a grant to each fire and rescue service, again for some specific kit and equipment in order to support some of the findings from the Grenfell inquiry. So we have a grant of just over 138,000, and again, it's about making sure that we've got the right activity and the right kit and equipment to support our local communities. One of the main focuses for that infrastructure fund was the provision of smoke hoods for fire and rescue services, specifically to enable the escape of people that live in high-rise residential buildings. So we've spent almost £34,000 on the procurement of those smoke hoods, and I can tell members that that gives us a total of 319 smoke hoods. There'll be 2 hoods on every single fire engine across Devon and Somerset. There will be 5 smoke hoods on every whole-time fire engine and every aerial ladder appliance, so the long ladders, which we have 7 of across the service. And this gives us enough escape hoods to evacuate 1 floor of a high-rise building with our normal attendants. So obviously on a risk-based approach, we've made sure that we've got enough to evacuate buildings on a floor-by-floor basis. That'll be an ongoing progress of work in terms of training our staff to make sure that they have the ability to use those should the need arise. Chair, that brings me to the end of the paper, and obviously happy to take any questions.
Brilliant. I'll start off while I wait for members to indicate. On the last point, really, first, the smoke hoods. I know most of the members of the committee, but I'm just conscious that we've got people watching and potentially watching back on the video. Just to be clear, they're carried on the appliances to help us evacuate people from high rise. It's an additional benefit to us to be able to do that.
Absolutely, Chair. So one of the main issues in the Grenfell situation was that the single stairway to the tower became compromised by smoke. So the normal process of evacuation would be that the stairway would be what we call a sterile environment. So basically, you should be able to step outside the door of the flat, close it behind you, and still be able to breathe fresh air and escape down the stairway. Unfortunately, due to some of the construction methodology and some of the remedial work that had taken place, that sterile environment had become compromised at Grenfell. Because there is no guarantee of the integrity in a lot of the buildings now, one of the recommendations was the provision of escape or smoke hoods so that we could give people the ability to walk through a smoke-filled environment and still breathe and not be compromised in that situation. So that's what the hoods are designed to do. They are very much, a complement to what we do in terms of rescuing people in those situations.
Thank you, Pete, and I'll do my fire safety thing now as well. Of course, it's important for anyone in a fire situation to follow the guidance, the local guidance, and of course any of the crews that are the officer in charge of the crews that come in to deal with those issues.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair.
There you see, fire safety as well as scrutiny. That's what we like to see. I'm looking for anyone, for members. I've got a couple other members of the fire society. I'll go to George Wheeler first. Councillor Wheeler, sir, do you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. Mine was it was something of a detail. Paragraph 2.4 refers specifically to the aluminium composite material. We don't have any high-rise buildings with ACM cladding. Radio 4 have been carrying quite a few pieces recently about the plight of leaseholders and in high-rise buildings who can't sell their flats because of cladding problems. And it seems that there are lots of other cladding materials which are perhaps not as bad as ACM, but are also flammable, and so the safety of the towers is compromised. I wondered, as paragraph 2.4 refers specifically to ACM, whether we know if we have any other blocks which do have compromised cladding, but not ACM, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So part of the process of inspecting the 89 residential high-rise buildings that we've got is to identify some of those issues. At present, we haven't identified anything of any significant problem. Part of the problem also is the hidden construction. So the fact that fire can spread through hidden voids, through compromised compartmentation between floors, and through doors which have been changed and perhaps don't meet the original building regulations requirements. Some of that we won't be able to pick up because it's more of a building engineer process. You'll see reports in the media where certainly in other parts of the country there are residents associations that have severe issues and are obviously being asked to foot the bill for some of those inspections and also ultimately repairs. I'm not aware of anything in particular across Devon and Somerset at this point in time, but what I would say is that with the progression of the Building Safety Bill, which is an outcome of the Hackett review, I think we will see, and perhaps councillors in your roles in your primary authorities around planning, to make sure that there is compliance with whatever that Building Safety Bill brings forward. The Fire and Rescue Service are currently consultees to building regulations. We do not have any further legislative influence than being able to just comment on what we see as part of plans or proposals. What we would like to be in a place is to influence developers early on in whatever buildings they are providing. We unfortunately do have experience of poor building construction. Members may recall that in the summer of 2019, I think it was, we had some new builds in Exeter. They were two-storey houses where we would expect the fire to be contained within the property, but the construction was such that there were breaches between the compartment walls and the fire spread between properties, which we wouldn't expect. So this isn't a problem which is confined purely to high-rise buildings, new or old. This is something that the construction industry does need to get hold of, and that's the outcomes of the Hackett review. Hope that helps, Councillor.
Yeah, very comprehensive. Thanks very much, Pete. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pete. Actually, the point that you made about the authority and members being involved early in planning issues, I think that's an important point that I might ask that we formally note. I think it's important that tell me if I'm wrong, Pete, but I think it's important that what we try to do is advise members as well of ways to help, because this is a learning opportunity for lots of people, and it might be worth the committee maybe noting the fact that it was suggested that or that as a committee we felt it was important that fire authorities were involved as early as possible in planning stages for any buildings, but particularly for those in high rise. Tell me a form of words, Pete, that might get about, or if not, we could take it out. But I think it's an important point that we could note and take to the authority when it goes when these minutes go forward.
Thank you, Chair. I think maybe an opportunity to maybe either a members' forum or a workshop to discuss the sorts of things which would be really helpful for officers in terms of what members could do in those other forums and those other committees that they are part of. So sort of progressing the idea about domestic sprinklers, for example, but we could happily have a workshop based around that.
That would be helpful, but it's obviously, if we could just note it in the minutes that we've made that acknowledgement, that at least it shows that we're doing something. I got the chair of the authorities, Councillor Randall Johnson first, and then I'll bring Councillor Eastman in for his question. So, Sarah.
Thank you very much indeed. And just picking up on that very last point, you ought to have a word with Polly Colthorpe, because I believe she chairs a planning meeting at Mid Devon. So she might have some valuable support that she might want to chip in. I just wanted to go back to an earlier point around the stay put policy that was so disastrous at Grenfell. Have we changed, and particularly bearing in mind that we're now using smoke hoods, or have the ability to be able to provide that support when we've turned up? What is our current policy in the high-rise properties with this particular point? Because it will be from our command centre that will be sending information out to the public. This is a sort of public advice. And linked to that, in the 21 inspections that have already been held, were there any areas of serious concern that were identified?
Thank you, Chair. So, second point, no, we haven't had anything identified as anything particularly serious at this point in time, which is good, obviously. Your first point around the stay put policy, it very much depends on the risk assessment of the building. So, for example, if we have recognised issues around the escape routes, and there are potential problems which a stay put policy would be compromised, then the operational risk information provided to our crews for that building will have lifted that evacuation procedure. So this is very much a dynamic process which happens should an incident occur, and it will be for the commanders in charge of the incident to understand what they're looking at how they can deliver against the situation which is in front of them. Certainly from an operational directive perspective, early evacuation of any high-rise building is now a primary objective, but it must be done obviously within a safe manner. So if crews arrive at an incident and find that the escape route, as was in Grenfell, is compromised, then the stay put policy still has relevance, because people are potentially safer within their own flats as long as the compartmentation between those flats isn't compromised. Equally, if the escape route is clear and it appears that the fire is developing, then we would seek to evacuate that building as soon as possible. And that's where the provision of the smoke hoods, for example, will help us. So there is NFCC and National Fire Chiefs Council guidance available to us on this as well. And we've used that and implemented that locally. So a dynamic approach, really, Councillor.
Thank you, Pete. Councillor Eastman, Andrew, sir. You need to unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself, Andrew. So where it says unmute at the bottom of your screen, it should, you've got the unmute button. There you go. That's perfect. All yours, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. You made it very, very clear, Councillor Redmond, that you being an ex-firefighter as you are, the salient points that Pete Bond has been making in the excellent presentation he's done on the buildings and how the building construction is so important. Major issues of this calibre really need to go to Devon County Council and to all other major building companies, that this is so important and so absolutely essential that it's got to be considered and taken in for the construction of these buildings, that major issues of this calibre really have to be hammered home and brought to the public's attention, and the building companies and all of the issues of the managerial qualities, etc. You got the general picture of it, Councillor Redmond. Please enhance upon that and make it clear, and it's well and truly minuted in this meeting. Thank you.
Andrew, I know that. Thank you for your support in the comment. One of the reasons why we've asked for the Grenfell stuff to be on our agenda and updated regularly is so that we can raise awareness. That was why I specifically asked about, obviously, making members aware. And as Pete Bond has indicated, I hope that we'll be able to do that on a broader base. But the more people that are aware of the issues that are coming out to it, the more we can make sure that things are actioned. I think that's about right, Pete, isn't it?
Excellent.
Yes, absolutely, Chair. That would be helpful.
Thank you.
Well done.
I've got Councillor Corvid. Margaret, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it might have moved on a little bit since that point, but just to say the stuff about planning and connecting with planning authorities and planning committees is a very, very good idea. I just came off of a planning committee meeting yesterday, and I know that we're always looking for training, and just getting our planning committee members well briefed on what to look for in terms of fire safety, in terms of new builds, would be really helpful. So I'm sure Plymouth and our chair, Bill Stevens, would be interested in anything we come up with. Thanks.
Fantastic. It's great that it shows the members' support and interest to spread the word, because at the end of the day, this is what we're here for, to do the best for our constituents in any way we can. Steve, I think I haven't got anyone else waiting, have I? Are there any last call for members' questions, please? Turn your video on and wave at me if I've missed anything. Okay, that's that done. Super. Members, Pete, thank you very much for your time. Again, members, these are just to note, but I will take some of the, make sure that some of the points are reflected in our minutes so that they go forward to, and maybe speak a little bit when we present those minutes to full council when they come up. Steve, I've nothing else on my agenda, so I think we're coming to the end now, unless anyone else has anything. No, thank you all for your time. As always, stay safe. I think this is the last of these committees before we head towards 2021. So it's important that I take the opportunity to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope that you, of course, will be staying safe and to maintain the COVID safety in everything you do. Remember that by following the rules, we're helping save lives. That
Well
being
said, Chairman. Well said.
You can stop the recording. There being no further business, I close the meeting at 11:27 and the recording can stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Thank you, Lee. Happy
Cheerio.
Christmas, everybody.
Happy
you, Chair.
Christmas and have a
See you in
good
the new
year.
year.
Ping
And
pong.